Greetings, brothers and sisters. The 148th birthday anniversary of Lalaji Maharaj Sri Ramchandra of Fatagar, the first master of the heartfulness system, Basant Panchami. Basant is the spring holiday in India, and Lalaji, the first master of the heartfulness system, was born on this holiday, the first day of spring, I believe. And so the dates for this gathering, the dates for these meditations, will be 15th, 16th, and 17th of February 2001. And so if you're wanting to experience the heartfulness meditation, this is a great time to do it. The transmission, the energy that is given, is more potent and easier to experience in these birthday celebrations. And so there'll be these virtual sittings, online sittings, given on YouTube and maybe Facebook or something like this. And maybe 2 a day. I'm not sure. They haven't said anything about it. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'll do some more announcements as it gets closer. And so I wanted to also talk about some more about these comments that Daji Kamlesh Patel, the current master of the system, made about COVID that bummed some people out who are, doing the meditation and saw the video, him talking about, masks in a positive way and talking about, trusting the government and trusting the doctors and things like this were, people weren't so happy about that and sort of confused, and some people were bummed, and I talked about in a couple of long videos, but this one, I have some new insights that I had in a couple of meditations, and they're backed up by these whispers messages. So there are these whispers a day, and I'll try to remember to put the link to where you can get these. So these messages were published in book form, some of them, not all of them. There's supposed to be like 20,000 of them total. The most of this type of material, I've talked about this before, this French woman who was this great medium, was intercommune with Babaji and various other highly developed spiritual beings, and they put these in a series of books called Whispers from the Brighter World, but also they're released one every day, whisper a day, and you can, get them emailed to you. And this one was the French woman died in 2015, so this is, or 2016, I think. And so this is, the last year of her messages, and they're publishing these. This is the one that came in today, which was interesting. So it's from Beloved Master Reverend Babaji Maharaj, Friday, October 9th, 2015, 10 a.m. Immerse yourself in us, in this ocean of love where your soul delights. There you can happily tune into us. Only beauty surfaces in your consciousness, and you can receive our vibrations in this delightful state. This ritual is not ordinary. It will continue in a different way when you come and join us on the heavenly fields. You will then experience peace and harmony during the necessary period before returning one last time for a special mission. He's addressing the medium here in this first paragraph. It will be a milestone on this path of Saj Marg. Everything is written and will take shape at the appropriate time. A heart offered to the divine aligns itself with an exceptional destiny, surrender and love. Are they not the best possible assets in such situations? Destiny is unavoidable. For the occasion we can only rejoice and surround that soul to the fullest. Be at peace, all is well. Dear Master Kamlesh, too, will surely rejoice. Many events will surprise him. He is not at the end of his discoveries. The mission will continue to expand. Many events will occur, and thus will its story be written. To all the best, even in the midst of turmoil, the divine will manifest in the form that suits it. Very special blessings to all, Babaji. So to start off with, in terms of this message, where he says that this about Kamlesh Daji, many events will surprise him. He is not at the end of his discoveries. So some of the reason that, or maybe the major reason that people were upset or confused by Daji's comments, where they thought, well, if he's a spiritual master, then why wouldn't he know some of the things we all know about COVID and, truther stuff? And if he's a legitimate spiritual master or enlightened or whatever way people have of thinking about it, how would he, how could he not know these things? But there are a couple of things I want to say about it. I have some other incredible Whispers messages that are so truther oriented, and I want to get to those as well, because those will, I think, help in the understanding. And I'm going to leave a link in the description box, the top of the description box of this video, so people can sign up for these messages if they're interested in them. If I forget to do that, then please remind me, send a message on Facebook or something, because I, sometimes by the time I put up the video, I forget all about the link. Like I'm saying that now, and then I'll listen to this, and then maybe 3 hours will pass by before the video's up, And so that's why I forget to put in links. So please send me a message if I forget. But anyway, so let's get to the main subject here. So the first point is that in the heartfulness system, and what Babaji says in this message, is that he's going to have new discoveries, and he's going to be surprised at some of the events as they unfold, Daji. And the reason is that in the heartfulness system, there's no sense of making it in terms of your spiritual path and your spiritual journey, that you even merging back in the source, there's still more to go. And you can always be working on your character qualities and evolving and changing. So even the masters of the system, when they become the master of the system, they go through a spiritual evolutionary period as a master, and they are, more spiritual, they're more, divine by the end of their lives. They're moving in they're growing into their, whatever it is, right? I've seen significant changes in Daji and Kamlesh Patel in the last, my family and I went in India in 2013, and those so many years before he became the master at the end of 2014. So we were there in 2012, and we were there for a number of years, and then just seeing the changes that he exhibited, he just became, his spiritual condition was deepening and just everything. And I can see a big difference now in terms of the videos and just his mannerisms, and, his appearance is even different. And I've seen this in fellow practitioners of the system where I haven't seen them in many years. Of course, my brother, who I've known my whole life, is an easier example, and how they have softened, and they're just different. They're the same person, and they have the same personality and maybe quirks and things like this. But their condition and being around them is different. My brother's so much calmer, and, of course, as you grow older as well, you're becoming more spiritual naturally. Like after you hit your midway point in your life, whatever it is, when you're in your 30s or 40s or whatever, 50s for some people, there is then you become more and more spiritual from that point on, if you're living right, because you're becoming less physical. You're now in the death process, right? You have reached the midpoint of your life, and now you're going towards death. And the older you get, the more and more that you go to spiritual realms, especially if you're working on those things. And so by the end of your life, you're barely physical at all, right? And, you can barely eat, and, you can't really do many physical things. And if you're a meditator in the heartfulness system, your mind starts to wander off into the, great beyond, more and more what we call the brighter world. And so it happens for everybody, and specifically with spiritual masters who, the spiritual masters of the heartfulness system, they keep on growing and developing and, in a sense, learning their craft. There were some discoveries at the end of Master Charji's life where he learned how to make more than one preceptor at a time. This was something new to the heartfulness system. It hadn't been done before. And he was making hundreds of preceptors at one time where it used to be one at a time. And so there were these different changes and spiritual revelations that came to him at the end of his life, and the same thing will be for Daji. One of the problems is that when there's a new master of the system, that everybody compares them to the old master who was at the height of their spirituality, right before they died. And so they're comparing the new master to the old master, and it's not a proper comparison. And so Master Chargy's son gave this talk, and he, talked about there was this period in maybe it's 2012 or 2011, I'm not sure exactly the time, where Master Chargy went into a coma for like 2 or 3 months. And everyone thought he was going to die. I mean, he was gone physically, and he had some poor health before that. And, he came back, and his son looked at him one day, and said, "You're no longer Gandalf the Grey, you're Gandalf the White," comparing him to that transformation that you saw in the Lord of the Rings movies or the Lord of the Rings book, where Gandalf rose to a higher level, right? He took the position from Saruman or whatever it is. And so then he said that his father, his biological father, the master of the system, Master Chargy, said to him that he went through a spiritual transformation those couple of months when he was in a coma. And he says that every spiritual master has to go through this, and something they have to go through alone. And so he's in this physical trauma, and he went through this process, and he came back, and, I noticed the difference as well. I mean, so many people did. And then he was, alive for a couple more years, and he was in this totally different state. He had, evolved into a higher plane of existence. And I think that's the problem, that most people think that once you reach, some sort of spiritual goal, you're done evolving. And all these spiritual masters, they had a human side, and they had their own personal evolution and, their own personal cleaning and things like this. It's the same for all humans in the human experience. And so Babaji's saying that, Daji's going to have realizations, and some of those realizations might be about this truther stuff. But the other point about this is that the majority of people who practice the heartfulness system, 95% or 90%, aren't truthers. In fact, it's something that, I think the Indian people, for the most part, realize their government's corrupt, and yet they still trust it. They know that there's a lot of fraud and a lot of quacks out there. In fact, they talk about quacks in terms of spiritual gurus and in terms of doctors even and things like this. But they trust authority in a different way. It's very odd because it's a very corrupt country, and there's a lot of problems in terms of, corruption with leadership. And yet they're very subservient to their leaders and authority, and it's quite different where Americans challenge authority and have a rebellious side and are disrespectful to their elders and parents. That really doesn't exist in India. In fact, that's considered just a horrific behaviors to disrespect your elders, and like there's a whole thing there. And so there's two parts to this. The first one is that you have to remember that Daji's talking to a very diverse audience, people from all over the globe, people in authority, people in, power in terms of even political leaders and things like this that do the heartfulness system, people all around the world in terms of various countries. And most of those people are what you would consider sheeple, what we would consider sheeple, the majority of people, just like in any other, realm of existence. And so their orientation is going to be different. And his own personal belief needs to align with a lot of these people. And the masters of the heartfulness system, they aren't always consistent in what they say. They might say you might ask them a question and they give you one answer, and someone else would ask the very same question and they get a completely different answer, maybe even an oppositional, an answer that disagrees with the first answer. There was this story, I remember this young practitioner of the heartfulness system was, telling this story about how he got to spend time with Master Chargy, and he started thinking to himself, wow, now I'm in, because there was always this, level of, I won't say security, but, there was these people that, you had to go through to spend time with Master Chargy, and there were hundreds of people waiting by his, cottage at the ashram or at any number of places by his house, waiting to get in to see him. But there were some people like Daji, Kamlesh Patel, and other people who did extensive work for the mission, and, they would be working with Master Chargy, and they were able to just walk through anytime they wanted, right? Even I saw Daji before he was the master of the system. I spent some time with him in his office, and when I was leaving, he said, "Come back anytime you want." And I said, "Sure, And so there are people just could walk in and walk through. And so this young practitioner, after he spent time with Master Charji, he left, and he was sort of daydreaming about it, saying, "Wow, now I'm in, and I can just go, I go there anytime," and like they were buddies and friends, and and then he walked up to Master Charji like the very next day, and Master Charji said, "Who are you?" And he had this revelation about it. And the masters of the system think differently. They don't go by memory the same way, and it's something that I've experienced some changes in this area as well, where when you're connected to what we call the Ethernet, or what I call the Ethernet, you're connected to the divine source, that you get information that God gives you. You don't use your memory. Like, you can do both. You're doing both, but it's a difference between trying to do research by Googling something and searching on the internet and using your critical thinking skills, as opposed to getting into a meditative state and let the answer flow through you to God. And the masters of the system do that. And so a lot of times they say things that there's a reason for it. Maybe, to provoke a reaction. And maybe they're not even conscious of why they're saying it, but it is, meant for other people, for those people to have a reaction and have them gain greater understanding. So anyways, I found these couple of whisper messages, and they're such truther messages, but very few people who read them. And these are just a few out of hundreds, maybe thousands, that have truther stuff in them. I would say, as many as, 10% of them have something to do with truther narratives and truther stuff, even though the majority of people who read the messages don't pick up on that, or don't explore it, or don't research it for themselves. So this is from Babaji, a message given on Saturday, February 7th, 2004, 10 a.m. This correspondence has reached the very point we wish for. It is taking shape accordingly. This fact is out of the ordinary, but the Spirit makes light of the limits that men generally stumble over. Being incarnate, this area is not accessible to them, and all the nice theories cannot remedy it. We wish to open to our brothers of the future a door to the infinite that will give them an inkling of what life can be beyond this vibratory system that is quite limited for good reasons. Our comments may seem surprising, but that is a fact. The lights of knowledge of this world are far from being outstanding. It is a probationary and experimental place of work that is far different from what is portrayed in the literature produced by certain religions that have distorted the teachings of the masters. We are likely to shock, but one day all the truth will really need to be revealed. It is the only way humanity will progress. Skepticism will give way to amazement and then to certitude in the face of outstanding facts. We are trying to prepare people's minds bit by bit for the moment. We cannot go any faster. Our foremost recommendation is to encourage our aspirants to work hard. When one is opening up to the divine splendor, it is easy to conceive what life really is, now and beyond this world, where it extends and changes, yet remains an emanation of the divine. Working towards the elevation of humanity remains our priority. Preparing it to grow on all levels is a long-term project. Everything is slow on this earth. We cannot change the system for the moment, but let us do things one by one. May all be strengthened and blessed in the view of that. Babaji. So I found it interesting that he talked about this probationary. This is a place where it is experimental and probationary. My brother and I were talking about this, and my brother reminded me that he talked about, the earth is an experiment, and humanity is sort of an experiment that's gone off the rails a little bit. And he talks about that in various ones of these messages. And so there's a couple more messages that I want to get to. The first one, he talks about obscurantism. And there's so many of these messages that have the word obscurantism in them. And what obscurantism is, the practice of deliberately preventing the facts or full details of something from becoming known. So him saying this, that human beings will first be skeptical and then they'll be amazed, right? Because they've been lied to forever. And you just think about how, there could be a UFO that showed up in the sky and so many people could put it up on YouTube and everybody's like, that's fake. I mean, you think about how humanity is right now and everybody's so cynical and it's hard for them to agree on anything and believe in anything. But obscurantism is what I've been talking about in terms of these TV shows where you see one after the other. There's a big event coming. There's some sort of meteor that's going to hit the earth or whatever it might be. And the government doesn't level with the people. Or something happens and the government lies about what happened. And they say people can't handle it. And there's some evidence to back that up. But obscurantism is more about lying to all of us about the origin of our species, where we came from. Because the people in power know, many of these secret organizations know at least more than we do, and they hold that information for themselves, and they put out all this disinformation. And so again, this is all truther stuff. If you read the whispers from the brighter world, they're saying our leadership lies and that we are, we're not very evolved either, the people who are relying on these leaders, and humanity isn't doing well, and there's all this corruption and money power, and we're destroying the planet, and there needs to be an intervention, that the divine forces have to do something to get humanity back on track. So let me go to this message about obscurantism. This is a message from Babaji, Thursday, September 8th, 2005, 10 a.m. Love is the only flame capable of illuminating the world plagued by hatred and violence. Every reason is used for their justification, racial, religious, or most often having to do with self-interest. Given this devastating wave, we can only affix the seal of the divine love, which men seem to ignore. What they consider as their own right is actually one of the darkest designs of the obscurantism that has been prevailing on earth for too long. Currently, in an ascending phase of its destiny, it will have to seize the opportunity to rise or else perish. Many souls await their salvation. The conditions are met, therefore, for them to show their best. Their incarnation in these troubled times is a sign for them. The choices are theirs. May the reign of peace and harmony finally prevail in this world, and may all the men be united in fraternity and respect for all the lives on this planet. It is not utopian to wish for these blessed times. Humanity cannot remain eternally on the sidelines compared to worlds that exist by creating serious disturbances likely to destabilize the entire cosmic balance. The time has come to act on all levels. The fate of this world depends on this. May all the people of common sense become aware of the current situation. Time is pressing. We insist for the good of our aspirants, but also for all men, since without distinction they will have to compensate for the errors made by the multitude. Babaji. And you understand that this is a whole different level of truther, where there's work being done by the heartfulness system to bring about the end of obscurantism, where all people will have the full knowledge, at least have access to the full knowledge of why they're here, how human beings got here, what the purpose of life is, all this hidden knowledge, universal knowledge and things that's been hidden by the governments and science and religion and all these ways that people have manipulated their brothers and sisters, the leadership people. And there's just all these levels of deception, because all deception gets its root in obscurantism. And obscurantism, this word appears in so many of these whispers messages. And so I've covered this before, and so I'll come back to that. So this idea of trusting the leadership that is constantly lying to people, and experts and people that withhold information, and they have one set of information for the people that are in the club, either financial or educationally or whatever it is, right? Governmental people that withhold information, the governments. And so, again, there's this truther element in the heartfulness system that goes beyond anything that we see in our, online truther movement or whatever it is. I mean, the stuff that's revealed just in these whispers from the brighter world and a lot of these various heartfulness books is new information, and it, flies in the face of lots of religious teachings and other things, and certainly the governmental and scientific stuff that's put out there as fact. And so the heartfulness system is very much a truther organization, but, it's something where most of the people who are in it don't really need to know about that right now, or it's not their primary focus. And so it's not talked about, but it's there. So there's this other message too I read, and there's a bunch I saw, and I'm not going to be able to read them all. Just doing some research, I searched through some of my saved messages that have a lot of these various, elements in them. This is a message from Babaji, Friday, January 14th, 2005. Would humans tolerate powerful machines being sent to Earth on an experimental basis? These facts are fraught with consequences. The madness of humans is boundless. Believing that they are alone in this universe, they act without discernment. Astrophysicists are getting more and more excessive. That will cost the whole of humanity dearly. The recently carried out feat will generate once again a series of reactions of cause and effect. It is in the nature of things. So there must have been something released into space, and this is something he talks about over and over again, destabilizing space. And there's planets with etheric life on them, and by sending things out into space, that there is, without distinction and without this idea that there's other life forms out there, and you might disturb the vibrations, and then weaponizing space, Space Force and all this stuff. The cup must be drained to the last dregs, as they say, to expunge the evil. This movement cannot be quelled on the earth. Nothing will stop this frenetic quest. Man is unstable, and his interest prevails over all. What importance does life have for him? It does not carry any weight for him. Only highly spiritual values could change the face of the world. What is going on today? Many human beings are awakening to a higher level of consciousness. It is a start on a path capable of propelling them to another level. The transition will be hard. It can only occur in a special context. The movement is starting and will take its course. A spiritual way like ours is an integral part of it. Its vibratory niche is appropriate to present and future times. It pertains to the great redeeming project where enormous undertaking remains to be done. In the current context, all of our remarks can seem devoid of meaning. How could aspects that completely surpass today's man be taken seriously? Many of our brothers are progressing. The future has not yet started to surprise them. What is important for them is their personal work focused on their spiritual growth. Babaji. So again, these are just a few of these messages that have some of this truther stuff in them. This idea of obscurantism is at the center of it, that human beings are experimental. It's an experiment, and that things have gotten out of hand here on planet Earth, and it's starting to destabilize the cosmos. Like, it's affecting things beyond Earth and the spiritual realms of existence and other planets. And human beings are not only deprived of knowledge, but when they get that knowledge, they're skeptical of it and reject it, out of stubbornness and willfulness and prejudice and clinging to limitations. And so there's this arrogant nature to human beings, and their self-interest in terms of profit and money power is preventing spiritual growth. But if something doesn't happen soon, we're at the risk of destroying ourselves. So this is the context. This is just sort of the jumping off point to understanding the philosophy behind the heartfulness meditation. And the system that's given, the heartfulness meditation, is specifically given for this time to help human beings connect to an internal source of information and open their hearts and deepen their relationship with God, and so that they can see things and evolve to a higher level of consciousness that will prevent the destruction of the world, and that we either have to make this leap or something else has to happen that won't involve human beings, at least this version of human beings that is on the planet. There has to be an evolutionary step, because human beings have evolved technologically, but they are de-evolving in terms of their character, in terms of being natural, organic, and spiritual beings, and a reflection of their soul. That we're going down in terms of our personal evolution, in terms of our relationship with God, and what it's like to be a natural human being, but we're moving up in terms of our technological development, including weapons and other things that we're not mature enough to use. And so if you understand this, that this is a big part of the heartfulness meditation, and so even though it's not recognized right now so much by practitioners, or it's not talked about so much in terms of the heartfulness website or by Daji on these videos and things, it's there. And many people who do the meditation, it's not really necessary for them, at least at this particular time. But in the future, it's certainly going to be something that everyone's going to have to face up to. We're all going to have to realize that we've been, played and lied to, and the things that we think are true history and true science are completely, deceptive. They're deceptions made by people who are profiting from the fact that they have true information, or at least more real information than the masses. And that's going to come around. Like, that has to be, at some point, the obscurantism has to go. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Apocalaughs. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.